Hi, everybody. Working from home is no doubt a challenge for many people, and getting a team to work from home, setting all of that up is a real challenge for CIOs for many companies that haven't been already set up this way. Daphne Leprince-Ringuet is with me here to talk about this. Daphne, your article goes over a lot of the aspects involved here, but just to start off, CIOs are especially important. Their role is right now as they're trying to switch entire workforces over to a work from home model.
Yeah, as you said, Karen, as cities shut down and countries locked down, entire organizations and their workforce have to switch to remote working. And the CIO's role is essentially to make sure that this happens with as little friction as possible, and that the switch is as smooth as possible for the workforce so that they can keep carrying on working remotely, and that a business can keep going as usual as much as possible. So obviously they have been quite key workers in the past few weeks, past few months. And the short-term challenge and goal is definitely a more technical one. And it's about making sure that organizations' infrastructures are ready to cope with the surge in remote working. So that's all the way through very basic things like making sure that all employees can be set up with a laptop, that all if they don't have a personal device at home, through things like making sure that they can have access to basic apps like email or file syncing or online collaboration tools like video conferencing or messaging. And of course, there's also the issue of security that's very important, that should be top of the list for all CIOs, with crisis being a sort of playground for cyber criminals to carry out spam attacks, malware attacks, and so on. Security is definitely something that CIOs should be thinking about constantly and should be on top of their to-do list at all times. All the while having to take in a lot of IT requests from their colleagues who are not necessarily used to working from home and will have more sort of questions, and be putting through more requests for the IT teams, and often to very short deadlines because, as we all know, lockdowns have tended to be sort of overnight, last minute events. That means that there's been so much pressure on the IT teams and on their managers, CIOs, to make sure that this whole process was carried out as smoothly as possible, as fast as possible, and without too many glitches. So yeah, CIOs have definitely been sort of the key workers in the recent days, and it's likely that they are only going to grow even more in their role and importance in the coming few weeks.
Yeah, and for many companies, Daphne, such as ours, we have a work at home model that has been in place for a while, and a lot of our folks work from home. So this was not really anything new for a lot of us, and that is the case for some companies who have been a little bit ahead of the curve here. So some I would think right now are faring a little bit better than others that where this is very foreign to them.
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, predictably, for companies that already have a strong work from home culture, who are more digital savvy in a way, this switch has been rather smooth. It's for, as you said, those companies that are more tied to traditional office-based work that the switch has been a lot harder. So on the one hand, there's the infrastructure and the services that are not ready within the infrastructure to support remote working. As I said, for example, employees not having personal laptops and needing to be provided with them. Things like, for example, digital signatures, which might have seemed not that important previously, all of a sudden become such a source of time loss. If you have to sort of print documents, sign them physically, scan them, and then email them back, that's a huge amount of time lost. Whereas if you already had digital signatures implemented, it's a lot smoother. And there's another thing that's quite important here is that in companies that aren't so used to working from home, employees haven't really integrated that culture within their working habits. And that might also be a challenge for CIOs in the sense that it's not only about technical knowledge and knowing how to use remote tools, it's also about incorporating those habits in your daily routine. And that's something that CIOs are also going to have to accompany, and that's a change that they're going to have to foster. And it's going to also change the nature of the role of the CIO that so far wasn't as focused on human resources as this sort of job might entail in the future.
Yeah, and so much of it, on that level that's different for CIOs. Is some of the things that are hard to explain to people, how to deal with, like, just in the time that we've been talking, I'll have a kid that walks through, or a dog that's barking, and your phone's ringing, and all of those different things that we're not used to having in our workspace that are happening now, and dealing with those, keeping employees engaged, all of that, that's a big hurdle to get over. Any guidance that you've been given to pass on in terms of how employers and CIOs can help get people over the hump and help them stay more engaged?
I think the main thing that has come across from experts and analysts talking about this is communicate more, communicate a lot to your employees, make sure you engage with them, make sure that you, on a daily basis, know what they're up to, know how to use those tools, know how to engage with those tools and stay productive. So obviously it's about organizing meetings for work purposes, or all hands company all hands meetings on a weekly basis and things like that, but it's also about virtual happy hours, and sort of more relaxed and informal meetings that bring this human element to the engagement and the collaboration that has been lost because people are not in the office anymore, but that is still needed somehow. And it's also worth noting that for some employees, this new model might be more fitting. Some employees actually are really enjoying the flexibility, the freedom, the self-discipline that work from home requires, and it's just more suited to their personality. So it's also something to keep in mind as we go back to a normal sort of scenario, and that CIOs should keep in mind as they elaborate their IT strategies moving forward.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how many move to more of a hybrid model when we do move back to normal, and into offices and things of that nature. Well, we're all just figuring it out as we go along, right, Daphne? And certainly articles like this with information for CIOs to pay attention to is really important. And we have a good bit of this type of information, of course, on ZDNet and Tech Republic, and we hope that you'll check it out. Thanks for watching.